What's up, guys? Mineral Mentor Travis here. I spoke with an awesome homeopathic doctor, Dr. Jeneffer Payne, tonight. She is a follower of Dr. Wallach. She's part of the revolution, the movement to just become healthier and better for ourselves. We talked about a lot of different things, from narcolepsy to how homeopath relates to naturopathic remedies, to nutrition, to products, the whole works. So I hope you guys are ready to tune in, strap in. This video will be probably about an hour or so, but I'll say it's fully worth it. I learned more tonight than I've learned in a long time, and I do research constantly. This stuff is really good, really important content. And if you want to learn really cool stuff just about how to integrate very simple things into your own life to feel better, this is the place to do it. So listen in, tune in. Please, if you like this, go ahead and subscribe and like the video. We'd love to see you on the page. And then let us know what else you'd like to learn. We can get more doctors, more people on here to talk to you about ways to heal. So I hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you next time.
So my name is Jeneffer Payne, and I am a classical homeopath, and I have been practicing homeopathy for, it's almost 20 years. I think it's like 18 years. And yeah, I used to say it was just over 15 years, but it is clear up to almost 20 years. And I started studying intensive medical nutrition for primary care, and that was about 7 years ago. And so I've really harmonized the homeopathy with the intensive medical nutrition, and also the study of the life's work of Dr. Joel Wallach. So
Awesome. And to be fair, I don't even know exactly what homeopathy is. So would you mind
yeah,
explaining
sure.
that?
So give me just a second, because can we edit this part out, because I got this terrible itch in my nose, and you can ask
Yeah,
me.
you're fine. No, I'm gonna.
I'm like, we're on my introduction, and I'm like dying.
I'm gonna cut it all. No, I'm gonna cut it all out. Oh no,
Okay.
my wife made me extremely self-conscious because I do a lot of live videos for the nonprofit. And
Yeah.
she's like, you cut your nose too much. Like when I'm talking, I'll just like, and she's like, you gotta cut it out. So now I'm like so self-conscious. I look at my hands in my pocket.
Right?
But anyways, go ahead.
Okay, so if you want to ask me the question again, then we'll cut to here.
Yeah. So what exactly is homeopathy, and how does it work with Wallach's studies of nutrition and all of that?
Sure. So let me first start out with that medicine is an arena. Medicine is an arena of different methods. And in the arena of medicine, the modalities or methods of healing include naturopathic, homeopathic, chiropractic, Ayurvedic, Chinese herbal, Tibetan medicine, and all the different types of healing that is in the arena of medicine, okay? Along with that, there is also allopathic reductionistic in the arena of medicine, and that is like your mainstream medical doctor. That's the doctor that goes to the medical college for 8 years, and then they get the little MD behind their name, and everybody considers them to be the expert in medicine, right? But the truth is that they only claim expert in their method of healing, which is allopathic reductionistic. They're not an expert in naturopathic. They're not an expert in homeopathic. They're not an expert in Tibetan healing. You get the point, right? So all of the methods of healing in the arena, except allopathic reductionistic medical doctors, believe that the body is inhabited by an intelligent life that already wants to heal. And they have different opinions and different principles in order to bring that healing to manifest. Okay? So chiropractors believe that you need to adjust and align the skeletal system and the meridians, and that alignment brings harmony back to the body, and the body can heal itself when the body has its alignment, right? And naturopathic doctors like Dr. Wallach, okay, they have 8 different methods of healing that they study, okay? And so the way that homeopathy harmonizes with what Dr. Wallach's doing is that homeopathy is a method that naturopathic study. And Dr. Wallach, I've had conversations with about homeopathy with Dr. Wallach. It's not his specialty, okay? Dr. Wallach specializes in because he also has his postdoctorate in comparative pathology. And in fact, this is a little plug for Dr. Wallach. Dr. Wallach, I believe he has the most comparative pathology clinical experience in the world, that he is the world's expert on clinical pathology, the comparative pathology. And that is, of course, from all of those autopsies, over 38,000 career autopsies. So I don't even, what I know pales in comparison to that. It's his life's work. He's an amazing, definitely genius guy, something uncommon going on with him. Anybody who can do 38,000 autopsies, that's uncommon grace, right? So pay attention to people who have uncommon grace. So homeopathy is a type of healing. And actually, by the way, Dr. Glidden practiced homeopathy for 15 years before he connected with Dr. Wallach, and he started harmonizing Dr. Wallach and homeopathy as well. So he knows a lot more about homeopathy. He's not like, I'm an expert. I consider myself an expert, and because I've been doing it for so long, and I went through homeopathic medical school, and I have a lot of clinical homeopathic experience. I'm kind of like the go-to homeopathic person, right? Dr. Glidden is amazing as well. He doesn't have the expertise in the lesser known remedies, but he has expertise in the principles and the methods, and has recommended amazing, if you've listened to some of his videos, amazing cures. He's an amazing, amazing physician. So down to the nitty. Homeopathy has a scientific principle that is present in nature, and it uses that scientific principle in a way that brings about healing in the patient. And so what that is that 2 diseases of the same type cannot exist in the body at the same time, okay? And so when it was discovered, the sort of first inklings that something was going on that's in recorded history that we know about is milkmaids were contracting cowpox. And at the time, the cowpox would go up like to the elbow. You would get the malaise and stuff, but they would actually have, like, you imagine chickenpox, they actually had cowpox, okay? And what was interesting was that when smallpox swept through, none of the milkmaids contracted it. In fact, it cured their cowpox. And so this was kind of like one of the first, wow, what is this weird thing in nature going on, right? So it was just kind of interesting at that point. And then one of the other things that happened was there was a physician, the founding physician, his name was Samuel Hahnemann, a German guy. He was a genius guy too, super brilliant. One of the first guys that said that there's such a thing as a germ, and hygiene was important. And he was one of the very first physicians that said, you know, maybe we shouldn't go from the morgue to delivering babies without washing our hands, right? And so he spoke 11 languages fluently, and he had 8 children. And so he was a medical doctor. And back then people were drinking mercury and calling it a cure, and bloodletting. And, you know, they believed that if you cut a vein and you let out a pint of blood, that it would leak out the disease, right? And so that's actually what killed George Washington, believe it or not. George Washington made it through the Revolutionary War with bullet holes in his jacket, but it was medical doctors that killed him with the, you know, bleeding out too much blood. So just foolish. But anyways, so he didn't want to be a doctor anymore because it just was unethical. So he but he still had to put food on the table for his family. So he started translating the writings of Hippocrates from the language it was written into the common day language, just as a side job, just family man. He was trying to put food on the table, and he started noticing all this stuff. And at the same time, things that Hippocrates was saying. And then at the same time, sailors were exploring tropical islands. Really, it was like a big exploration time. And so they were contracting malaria from mosquitoes. And so they had learned that they could take this bark of this Peruvian tree, and we know it as quinine, and they could mix up quinine tea and drink it, and it would get rid of their malaria. And this just fascinated Hahnemann. He thought this was just so fascinating. And so he got a bunch of this quinine tea, and he got himself a journal, and he was completely healthy. He didn't have malaria at all. And so he just started to drink this tea, and he was like, what is going to happen to me if I drink this tea? And this was the first proving. And I'm not going to get into all that at this point, but basically the gist of it is he developed malaria. And when he stopped drinking it, the malaria went away. And when he kept drinking it, the malaria got stronger. And so he started to develop this idea that a substance, if it could cause a set of symptoms in a healthy person, then it could also cure that same set of symptoms in a sick person, because two diseases of the same type cannot exist in the body at the same time, right? So if the person's healthy, then they don't have that set of symptoms. So when they add the substance, it causes that set of symptoms. But when they already have that set of symptoms and they take the substance that causes that set of symptoms, they cancel each other out, right? And so he starts going through all the poisonings, like every poisoning. Like there was this one where women used to write with a quill. And so it was the ink that they used was made from the cuttlefish. And so what they would do is they would lick the quill to moisten it, and then they would dip it, and then they would write, and then they would lick. And so they were getting this like trace poisoning of this cuttlefish ink, right? And it was causing them to like act crazy. And so he had this, he went through because he's this genius guy who speaks a lot of languages. So he goes through all of these poisoning, like articles and journals and things of doctors that are writing down, these crazy women that are coming in with this thing. And so he got this ink, and he figured out, okay, this is what's causing it. And then eventually learned how to dilute, because of course you can't drink mercury or give mercury as a cure, but it's causing a set of symptoms, right? So he was taking the substance and he was perfecting it. He was diluting it and making it more potent at the same time. And that process is called potentization, which is a totally another conversation. The basic idea is now we have homeopathic remedies that are the potentized form that are totally diluted. So super safe. There's no side effects. There's no chemical left. It's just the potentized form of these substances. And when you have that set of symptoms that this substance has, it gets rid of it totally, right? So I was gonna mention, you said your wife has allergies. Okay, such a good remedy, super good explanation of homeopathy, and then we'll move on. So you know how when you cut red onion, it makes you cry. And if you do it enough, your nose drips and everything. So they make a remedy called allium cepa, and it is Latin for onion, right? And so it is actually used to treat allergies and hay fever. And so if you have like constant sneezing, or you've got the like really bad nasal drip, or you've got the itchy, watery eyes, all of that is this remedy. You can get it at like the local, over the counter at the local store, allium cepa. And it's one of the ones I keep in my medical kit. Super great example, because you can see how in its chemical form, it causes those symptoms, but in its potentized form, it cures those symptoms. And so that's homeopathy. And by contrast, allopathic reductionistic means opposite disease. So if you have heartburn, they give you an antacid. They're giving you something opposite, where homeopathy gives you something the same, right? So if you go to a regular doctor and you have anxiety, they give you an anti-anxiety medication. If you have depression, they give you an antidepressant. If you have, what else? There's a ton of, if you have an inflammation, they give you an anti-inflammatory, right? Everything in allopathic reductionistic medicine is anti this, anti that, and that's their belief system. In homeopathy, we give the same. So that's the gist of homeopathy.
I mean, that's great. I'm going to have like 7 different videos out of that. That was so and I just learned like so much. I had no idea about any of that. So that's really cool. I also didn't know that it's part of being a naturopath. I guess I didn't really know exactly what a naturopath was either.
Right. Okay, so here's a great example of
I
how
just follow people that like seem to make sense.
there you go. So here's a great example of how it harmonizes in practical means. Okay. So let's say that you have the beginning of arthritis in your knees and you've got an older gentleman. He still holds down a full-time job. Maybe he's in his 50s and his knees are really hurting him. Right. And he goes to a regular medical doctor and they're like, oh, knee replacement, you know? And Dr. Wallach makes a joke about it. And he says, if you go to the farmer, right? Have you heard this one? You go to the farmer and the veterinarian tells the farmer that his bull, he can't breed the cow because he's got arthritis in both of his knees. And so he needs a double knee replacement and that'll be $50,000. And then boom, you hear the shotgun go off.
Farmer shoots the cow. Yeah. Yeah.
So the farmer shoots the bull. So instead, the veterinarian says, you know, we'll put these nutrients in the cow's feed. In a few weeks, we'll regrow the cartilage, and the bull will be able to breed. The bull will be able to breed, and then no problem, right? And so in the animal industry, that's what they do because we can't have $500 a pound for beef if we were treating people, if we were treating animals like we do people, right? So the way that homeopathy harmonizes with that is if someone came to me and said that they have stiffness in their joints, okay. I would immediately health questionnaire. I would identify what nutrients were available or what nutrients were deficient that they need to add to their diet, clean up their diet, right? All the basics. But it takes a little while. Dr. Wallach says 90 days for measurable results, and we're rebuilding their knee. We're rebuilding their back. We're rebuilding their neck, whatever. It's going to take a little while. We're putting the raw materials, the building blocks in to build it up. Well, homeopathy can come in and there's a remedy where in like 5 minutes, they can be largely pain-free. And I'm talking about like from a 9 on pain to like a 2. Now, is the homeopathic remedy going to rebuild that cartilage? No, of course not. It's not the raw materials that the body will use as building blocks to rebuild that, right? But is it cheap? Yeah, it's like less than $10. Is it gonna get rid of the pain? Yes, absolutely. Is it a permanent fix? No, it is not in my experience. And so that was a little bit of frustrating for me as a homeopath to have people that I don't like people to be dependent on anything unless it's essential. Obviously, we have to be dependent on water, 90 essential nutrients, oxygen, things like that. But homeopathy, I think, should be used in terms of as needed, not the regular daily protocol. You know what I mean? So that's just my opinion.
The way that I'm kind of understanding is like you're using homeopathy with building up the trace minerals to rebuild is kind of like homeopathy is like bridging the gap.
Yes.
And like taking the pain away while the body repairs itself.
Right. Right. And you can, believe me, you can do all kinds of different things. I have tons of different types of clients, right? I have some people that swear by CBD. And so they will do the CBD soothe and they love it. I have some people that can't. They use it and they feel like it doesn't change anything for them. And it's not like super common. You have to understand too, you're talking about like a $70 product versus a $10 product as well. And so if they're affording 90 essential nutrients for their body weight, then a $10 product sometimes is better, right? Sometimes. So it just all depends. You also have to consider it's people's discipline too, because I mean, just because I can figure out what's going on with someone and help them understand what has caused, that's what I'm really focused on, is what is causing this problem for you. Let's get to the cause, right? So just because I can figure that out, there's other components in the equation. One of them is, can you afford the building blocks that it's going to take to rebuild that thing, right? First of all, do you believe it? The belief is like a huge one of them. Then it's, can you afford the building blocks that it's going to take to rebuild? And then if you can afford it, are you disciplined enough to do it? Because I can't tell you how many people that we go through a whole process, and you would think that with skin in the game and a major investment, and then they just refuse to do it correctly. And it's like, you know, I tell people, like with the Z Radical, you need to drink, you know, you need to put an entire bottle down in 4 days. That's 4 ounces in the morning, 4 ounces in the evening, and then cut by half and put another bottle down in 8 days. So you get about 2 weeks out, and those are 2 bottles, right? I talk to people like week 6, and they're like, still got 3 bottles. And I'm like, they only bought 4. And they're talking to me, well, I don't know about my inflammation. And I'm like,
I'm
well,
not really feeling a difference. And it's like,
right.
well, your 1 selenium a day isn't going to do anything.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely share that frustration. Obviously, I'm not at your level of education, but just going through the process with people, doing the health quizzes, finding the root of the problem, doing a write-up, like walking them through the steps. And then you talk to them like 2 or 3 days in, and like, I haven't opened anything yet. And you're like, what are you doing? You spent hundreds of dollars. What's happening?
Right. But you know, what's interesting that I've found, and maybe this will take the conversation in another direction, but I think everyone, it comes down to the now moment, you know? And I think so many people just absolutely squander it, including myself a lot, right? I work towards taking advantage and not taking advantage, using the advantage I have now. And that is such a powerful statement, because how many times have we, you know, bought a book with the intention of reading it and never do, bought a tennis racket with the intention of playing tennis and never do, you know, just a ton of things like that you can think of that you prepare for. Our line of work is a perfect example. People learn and learn and learn and learn, and they never use what they're learning to do, you know? And so I think the trick with the nutrients is to develop an emotional attachment to them. That has been, which is why I always recommend and I'm gonna, it's okay to coin, I'm gonna coin products. I always, unless you don't want me to,
No, that's fine. No, you're good.
I always recommend the Z Radical pack. And the reason I recommend the Z Radical pack is because a bunch of reasons. One of them is it has that 4 bottles of Z Radical, and no matter what else they're doing, those bottles of Z Radical are invaluable for flushing the gut, lowering inflammation, launching the healing process. I mean, fucoidan is the main ingredient, and it is anti-cancer. It causes cancer cells to go into apoptosis, which is self-destruction. It stimulates healthy stem cell growth. It lowers inflammation. It's an immune system boost. There's so many things, but when someone really feels crummy and they want to invest into themselves, that Z Radical launches everything. So that's huge, right? But then besides the 90 essential nutrients and the selenium, all of those things are important. It also has pollen burst. And if we've talked before, you know how I have an emotional attachment to pollen burst. Still to this day, and it's been 7 years, and I drink pollen burst every single morning. Is the first thing that goes in my body. And I've actually developed an emotional attachment to a couple of other things now, but pollen burst was my first. And I tell people, ultimately, they're spending money because they want to feel better. And so while we know the principles in the 90 essential nutrients is the real power behind the whole program, that's the authenticity of it, that's the substance of it, that is the value of it. We understand that, right? But we're talking to people that have no point of reference for that kind of value. You know what I mean? And so what they understand is I have to get up tomorrow and go to work, or I have to deal with the children, or whatever it is, right? And so they want to feel good now. They want right now. We live in a right now world, right? And they want results, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so the Z Radical pack gives them that substance and value in the 90 essential nutrients, but it also has the Z Radical, which launches the healing process and speeds everything up because it's lowering inflammation, which means you can absorb things better, which means that the 90 essential nutrients are going to get into the blood system faster, right? And all of these things that we know that people are lost in the details. Okay, they're all they. That's why Dr. Corey Gold says juice feel good. He says, "What are you drinking? Juice. Well, what does it do? It makes me feel good, right?" And there is a amazing wisdom in that because that's the case. You drink a pollen burst, especially if you mix it with Z Radical, and you feel good. You feel good while you're drinking it, right?
Mhm.
And so if we can get people right from the beginning to feel good, and it can carry them further into the program so that they can get 30 days under their belt where they're feeding their body that superior fuel, feeding their body the nutrition, then not only have they developed an emotional attachment to the pollen burst right away because it makes them feel good, but the deeper acting value begins to develop an emotional attachment as well. And I think the final thing I'll say on that is, we have different spots on our tongue. We have the sweet and the sour, and we also have bitter. We have salty and we have bitter, right? And so most people like shy away from bitter things, but then as you get older, you start to appreciate the bitters, or if you have ever really developed your palate, you can have an appreciation for the bitters. So the thing about bitter is that bitter is the deepest acting of all of the tastes. Okay. It's the bitter tonics that are the most effective. They're the deepest acting, right? And so the sometimes people say, well, I don't like the way that the osteo tastes, or I don't like the way the nutrients are stout. Let me tell you, it's more nutrients than most people have ever seen in their life, let alone put in their body. And the taste is, you can doctor it up, you can add pineapple juice, you can do different things, but the taste is indicative of its power, right?
Mhm.
And so in the beginning, if people develop an emotional attachment to pollen burst and Z Radical and the way it makes them feel, I think it's easier for them to make it through developing the sense of value, because eventually your body learns, and it doesn't, I say eventually like it's down the road, but it's pretty quick, 3-4 weeks. Your body learns to appreciate the superior fuel source and will favor it, just like your body favors tonics, not when it first hits your tongue. Okay, just like a bitter, when the bitter first hits your tongue, you're like, oh, what is this, right? But the more that your body creates a relationship with the effect that that thing is causing, the more that the body, astragalus is like this. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm not an expert on herbs, but I think it's astragalus. Anyways, it's a bitter, it's a tonic, right? And it's super deep acting. So when it first hits your tongue, it's like, oh, what is this, right? But then after your body develops a relationship with that deeper acting reaction or the effect of that thing, then that's when you start to resonate with it. And some people do right away. Some people, they're so in touch, they drink the minerals, they're like, oh my gosh, this is it for me. That's not everybody. Most people are like, give me my Starbucks, give me my, and I mean, I'm just being honest, give me my whatever drink. And so you hand them 90 essential nutrients and they're like, what is this stuff, and so that's why I like the Z Radical pack, because I think it has all of it in there, the mixture of different things.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, I just started taking the good herbs for the men's hormonal support and the adrenal health, because I've had a caffeine addiction since I was like 16, and it's been on and off basically my whole life. And so I was like, oh, I probably have adrenal issues. And the first time I drank that stuff, it hurt my soul. It was so
Yeah.
bitter and it was so strong. And it's been a month now, and I am like craving this flavor. Like it's still so pungent, but like I know how it makes me feel. And
Right.
give me more, give me all of it.
Right.
Like I'll
And
drink all of it. Like it
and
doesn't.
Good Herbs is one of the best herbal tinctures one of the best brands I've ever seen in my life. Like, and I've used a lot. Like, I'm not an expert, but I've used different herbal tinctures. Good Herbs is potent.
Yeah, I
Good
mean,
Herbs is ridiculous.
I don't know. What do you know about like? This is super random, but I have a cousin that deals with this. But what do you know about like narcolepsy?
Narcolepsy. So I had a business partner who she it was never diagnosed like
Mm-hmm.
full narcolepsy, right? But she would like fall asleep while she was standing up. And she would fall asleep while she was doing important stuff. And
Okay.
so the fear was she's going to fall asleep while she's driving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what we discovered was that at the root of it, it was a blood sugar problem.
Okay.
And the blood sugar problems can put you in a comatose state. And really the if specifically if you're deficient in those two minerals,
Mm-hmm.
then the sugar builds up in the bloodstream, and a couple of things happen. One, you get thirsty because your body is trying to dilute your blood, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to pee a lot, and you get this thing with being tired. And it's really when the blood sugar spikes way up because you can't get it into the cells because you're deficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Spikes way up. And then when the body finally is able to get rid of it, it drops way, 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 way low. And so those spikes and drops it's the drop mainly that contributes to the sleepiness and the
Mm-hmm.
sort of comatose sleep thing. It's interesting because it also is tied in with bedwetting. So I would be interested to know about whoever was the person that had narcolepsy, if when they were a kid, they were a bedwetter, because this is like basically you have the sugar spike that goes way up, and then you finally fall asleep, and then that's when the sugar drops, and you go into that like comatose sleep, and then you bedwet, right? So
Interesting.
that's what
Okay.
I kind of discovered or found out about it, is
Okay.
just the blood sugar
Because
thing, you know.
that's what I had small amount that I could find from Dr. Wallach is that he just roughly related it to blood sugar, but there wasn't much description. So I kind of circled it back to like, is that why at night then they're up, right? Because he talks a lot about during the day he gets these like bouts of sleepiness, but then at night he can't fall asleep. And it's like, how does that? Where's the overlap? And is that because the spikes happen at night, and so they're awake, and then it goes down during
So
the day, or
so that's actually two different things.
okay.
Those are they seem, because they both have to do with sleep, it seems like it's related, right?
Oh, okay.
But it actually is two different things. So if he can't fall asleep at night, that's more like insomnia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is an indication of an alkaline mineral deficiency. So that's like your calcium, your magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
And then other things you would look to accompany that for confirmation would be things like muscle spasms or twitches or tics or cramps. So like even as subtle as like when your eyelid flutters and you have like that little twitch in your eyelid,
Yeah.
that is an indication of a calcium magnesium deficiency, right? All the way to something as severe as like a Charlie horse in your calf muscle, or a Charlie horse in a toe or something like that, So that is it is one of the symptoms of that is not being able to fall asleep when you want to, even when you're tired, right? Blood
Yeah.
sugar is when you fall asleep, then you can't stay asleep. So you constantly are like waking up and you're up and down and up and down. And then when you fall asleep, it's like there's a couple of different things. One of them is you fall asleep and you're comatose. Those are like the younger children, they bedwet, generally bedwet. And then there's another one where usually in a little bit older people where you fall asleep, but then you wake back up and it's like every hour, every couple of hours. And so they never fully feel rested. So they explain away the narcoleptic things that happen during the day because they're like, oh, well, I'm not getting enough sleep at night, right? So they're not pinpointing exactly what's going on. And it's mineral deficiencies, but they're different minerals. Alkaline mineral deficiencies for not being able to fall asleep. And then it's the blood sugar minerals that are required for the sort of, it's narcolepsy. That is like a labeled diagnosis. I would like to refer to it as uncontrollable bouts of sleepiness, right? If uncontrollable bouts of sleepiness better describe the condition we're talking about than some label. And the reason why is because there's probably lots of different reasons why someone would go through narcolepsy. I mean, I'm not an expert in the sense of like brain function. So, I don't know if there's like some kind of tumor or something someone can have and that causes them to go to sleep, right? That's a specialty I don't have. What I'm saying is generally speaking, when someone has uncontrollable bouts of sleepiness and it kind of looks like this, then it's likely to be a blood sugar issue. And it comes from a deficiency in those particular minerals. And then when you correct that problem, it goes away. So does that make sense? Because we're not really in the business of like diagnosing and curing. We're more in the business of honoring the design of the body and supporting its structure and function. And so when we talk in terms of this is what's happening in a general way, and so it just goes to stand that if the design of the body says you have to have those minerals for that function, and if you don't, then this other thing is going to happen, and that thing is happening, then it's likely that the minerals are the issue, right? You know what I mean?
And that,
so it's certainly the cheapest. It's certainly the cheapest and least invasive route.
Yeah, exactly. I just made a post on sleep apnea. I was like, snoring doesn't kill you.
Yeah.
I was ready for the backlash.
Well, yeah, because they've scared the bejesus out of people, and now they're wearing the. Have you seen the masks?
And they people are taking like robots with them to hotel rooms because they can't the doctor told them they're gonna die in their sleep if they stop breathing. It's like, no, that's just not true.
It is actually considered a 90% disability if you're in the military. So it's like this big, it's like this big joke in the military, crowd conversations where everybody's like, yeah, I think I'm going to get sleep apnea diagnosis. Because then they get that big disability.
That's like going to Arizona or California and deciding that you have insomnia because you want weed. That's
right.
Oh man, that's funny. So this, just to circle back without putting a label on anything, extreme sleepiness can happen in anyone that's doesn't have a diagnosis, and it would be a similar bodily response.
And
right?
I would greatly
most likely there'd be a deficiency in those two minerals that we're talking about because they're because of the blood sugar imbalance.
Yes. Yep. And I would err on the side of checking that. I mean, it's cheap, it's effective. If you have a deficiency, it makes you feel better right away.
Hmm.
And I'll give you an example. I have all three of my children have blood sugar issues, and I had the product in my house all the time, both products actually, and I never really recognized it in myself. And then uh, I had my eyesight change. It just seemed like my glasses were like, when I put on my glasses, it was like making my eyes weird. And I'd had the same prescription for years and years. And so I went to the optometrist and I got a checkup, and I mentioned my eyes really changed in the last like really 6 months. And he said, you should have your blood sugar checked. And I was just like, duh. Sometimes you just don't see stuff in yourself.
You're too close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I decided, well, what the heck? I'm just going to take a couple of sweeties. And so I had them lying around. So I grabbed a couple, I took them. I swear to you, in one day, there was such a mood elevation. I didn't realize that I had really slipped into like a low grade depression. And the next day, I was in my car and I started whistling. And I thought to myself, I don't think I've whistled in like a really long time. Like it had been months and months. I couldn't even remember the last time I was whistling. And it was just so simple like that, right? But we get so caught up in our day to day, what we have to do to do, that we sometimes don't take inventory of what is really going on.
Hmm.
And so this was like a major check for me about just keeping an eye out that I'm not impervious to these situations going on, and that I should keep an eye out on it. Because blood sugar also is the symptoms that in a big picture, not everybody has all of these, but generally blood sugar issues create ADD, ADHD. They cause things like anxiety, panic attacks, depression, difficulty losing weight, uh, acne, especially in adolescence, but also adult acne, diabetes, extremely being thirsty, extreme urination. What else? Waking up a lot at night, um, cravings for sugar and sweets. Uh, there's quite a few bedwetting. There's quite a few of the like symptoms that blood sugar lends itself to, like blood sugar, the mineral deficiency that
Hmm.
causes a blood sugar problem. Those are, it's like a pretty big category of things that it covers. And if you think about it, that's like most of what people deal with.
That's like,
Like pretty much everybody's
yeah,
got
I mean,
some of that.
I mean, just hearing like we know that stuff because we study it and we work with other people and we suggest it and we try and help. And then I noticed myself having some of these things, and I was actually creating a presentation and I was talking about blood sugar and I was like, holy crap, this is me. Like, how am
Right,
I missing this? And
right,
so, and it was because I had gotten caught in this, like, I made a really bad choice last Halloween and bought a bunch of bags of candy to give out, and then no one came. So then
right,
my wife and I just started eating candy,
right.
and then like
And
6 months later, we were still buying bags of candy.
right. Well,
And I
and
was
think
like,
about
and
it.
I was noticing all of those, like those things, like my anxiety was going up, and I was feeling like I was in like a depressive kind of state, and I was getting tired after meals, and all of these other things, and I like we're kind of like going out of whack. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I have this imbalance. So I got some sweeties, and then I cut out the candy, and I only needed the sweeties for like a month because the other, like, it's in the other stuff. It's just I just needed that higher dose for a little bit to like
Right,
stabilize.
right. And think about it like this. I'm so glad you brought up the candy because we're right before that season, right?
Oh yeah.
So
It's
you
among
look
us.
at the body naturally goes through a detoxing cleansing period when when the season and the weather changes, right? And it has to do with the moon cycles and all kinds of stuff like that. And so then you involve changes in society. Kids go back to school. Now suddenly you're having a family unit connected with a ton, hundreds of other family units out in the community, and then bringing it back to the house, right? As well as several other things that are going on in the fall. Then on top of it, you're going to add candy, right? And this year we have COVID, and the sugar content, sugar causes inflammation. And this is one of the big things that people overlook. Like, yes, you know, there's these panic attacks, anxiety, depression, all those are big deals, right? But you have to remember that when your blood doesn't process sugar correctly and the sugar stays in the bloodstream, then all of that is becoming inflamed because sugar causes inflammation. And so now you have a situation where, if you imagine, everything is swollen. So it doesn't communicate effectively. It doesn't heal itself or defend itself effectively. It doesn't allow for the absorption of nutrients effectively. It doesn't, you know, there's just, everything is like slowed way down, and everything is impeded because of the inflammation. And imagine that every day, right? So now you meet someone and they've been going through, like, you know, years and years and years upon years of just walking around inflamed all day long, right? And they want you to help them with, you know, something that's going on for them, heartburn or, you know, headaches or whatever. And sometimes it's really as simple as, let's get the sugar out of the diet as best you can, you know, because people, one of the things that has really changed in our society is, just in the last 150 years, we went from an entire family eating a 10-pound bag of sugar in a year to, I think it's something astronomical, like 25 or 30 pounds per person per month.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
I actually just looked this up somehow. I don't know why I came across this, but it's
awesome.
it's a pound every 2 days.
A pound every 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay,
Per
so
person.
that's like 15 pounds a month. Okay, so that's a little bit less than what I was thinking. I was thinking it was like 25. So
That's
15
the
pounds.
average. You know, there's people that do a lot more than
Right,
that.
right. That are putting down like 6 packs of soda and stuff, you know?
Mhm.
But 15 pounds of sugar in a month. So times that by, let me get out my calculator here. So we've got 15 pounds of sugar on average a month times 12 months. So we've got 180 pounds of sugar a year. And this is per person. And then, so we're talking about, it went from 10 pounds for a family in a year to 180 pounds of sugar per person in a year. It's just like ridiculous. So now add that on top of the fact that your body can't process the sugar as well, you know? And, you know, it's like, I don't know, we look for all of these fancy schmancy cures, and we trust these $1 trillion machines and stuff like that, and we don't just trust the simple, you know. It's just, according to the design, it's obvious that you don't want 180 pounds of sugar in your body every year, you know. I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
but yet people do it. And the thing is, and this is just such an important topic, because the reason they're eating that much sugar, the reason people eat that much sugar, is because they're not getting a superior fuel source. And so in the absence of a superior fuel source, their body favors an inferior fuel source. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
if they're lacking like the amino acids from protein, then their brain is going to crave the thing that will give them immediate energy, as opposed to giving them sustained energy, which you can do with chicken or whey protein, or obviously whatever's high density protein that has all your amino acids in it.
Yep. Great point. And even just as simple as just the minerals, you know, in the absence of minerals, people will crave sugar. Or in the absence of amino acids, people will crave sugar. Why? Because the body's learned it's a quick source of fuel. And so you have to have fuel to operate. And most people are unaware of the essential nutrients. Your body greatly prefers superior sources of fuel, but most people never get access to it. Most people don't have the understanding to pursue it, to acquire it, to value it enough to, and really it's an investment in yourself. It's not, in my opinion, uh, it's not a choice. It's a requirement. It is what I consider to be essential. So essential is necessary for life. That's the definition of essential. And things that are necessary for life, such as water. Okay, you can't get very far without water. Food, right? Well, why do we eat food though? What is the purpose of food? Pleasure, I think, is some of it. I think that we definitely eat for pleasure, but the real important reason that we eat is because we want the nutrients, the raw materials that the food is carrying. The food is a vehicle for the nutrients that we're putting in our body, and those nutrients fuel us up like you fill up a car, right? Well, the problem that we're having is everything is deficient. So you look at broccoli, when you think healthy, people think, broccoli, salad, green beans, vegetables, things like that, right? But the problem is that it only requires 3 minerals to produce a viable plant with a seed that bears a seed, right? And that is NPK, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, right? And so farmers put NPK into the soil and it produces a plant, and that plant is brought to harvest and it's put in the grocery store. Well, whatever happened to all the other nutrients? There's 60 other the 57 minerals in there that are essential, necessary for life. Well, in the absence of those nutrients, your body compensates. Okay. So your body will crave, like, this is a great example. So you know how people are really familiar with, if you're iron deficient, okay? If you're iron deficient, then you crave weird stuff like, clay and soap and paint chips and ice and different things, right? It's real common. Why do people recognize iron? Well, mostly because pregnant women, especially by their second child, they tended to have that problem with the iron. And so they always had the women having this pica problem, so it became more well known. Well, the truth is that every single one of the nutrients creates a picture that is just like that. It just so happens that we're really familiar with the deficiency of iron, but all of the nutrients create a picture like that, and we're just ignorant of it. We just don't know how to recognize, oh, that's what you do when you're deficient in that, right? And so part of our job, I think, as educators, as people who point towards the direction that is wise for people to walk, is by pointing out and helping people understand that just because they have this symptom going on doesn't mean they need to go and spend, whatever the case may be. People spend their money on insurance, and then they want to go to the doctor and they're like, well, I'm spending so much on my premium, I might as well get my money's worth while I'm here, right? So besides that fact, if people just understood basic stuff about how to recognize the deficiency and what to do about it, it would solve a huge, huge problem. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I mean 100%. And like you mentioned pregnant women, that's usually an example I try to use, because from what I've learned is like the baby, the embryo is taking all the nutrients. That's where all these cravings come from. People may not know what pica is. So that's like what all the cravings come from, where there was like pregnant women in like the 1800s, like eating dirt, because that was like what they were craving, because maybe that's where the mineral was. And like you said, mostly iron. But yeah, that's like good to know. I want to kind of circle back though. You said when seasons change, our body like detoxes. Is that what you were saying before we started talking about sugar and everything?
Yeah. Usually once in the fall and once in the spring, your body wants to go through a cycle. Okay. And so it's best to do your cleanses in alignment with those cycles, because it's almost like you have momentum. And so if you align or harmonize with the body's natural rhythms, then I believe that it produces better results, right? And so you get a lot of like nasal drainage. The sinus cavity wants to drain in the fall. That's why people, generally will get the sniffles. Same thing in the spring. You're more likely to catch something as far as like an illness goes, a pathogen, in the fall or in the spring, because as your body goes through its natural cycle of detox, it's flooding out those toxins and things that it's held onto out into the bloodstream and pushing it out of the body. And so when that happens, then you're susceptible, right? You're susceptible. It's not being bound up inside the body, it's being released. And so while it's being released, there's a time period where you're susceptible. So that's why it's important now to, and even before now, but certainly now, you're always empowered now to start mitigating that risk by, one of the greatest things I could recommend is like a nasopure or an epi. They're called neti pot. And I'm not sure if you've ever used one before.
Yeah, where you like run the saline kind of solution to like clear everything out, helps you like detox. Yes. My wife uses them frequently because she has got allergies out the wazoo.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's really cool. I had no idea about like that natural rhythm that we went through. So that's
right. And so you look to last year I did a fast. So just things that optimize your body's ability to clean itself out and prepare for the upcoming season, right? Mm-hmm. And so obviously in the winter time, or as we're headed towards fall, you are going to be looking for things that keep your body temperature elevated so that you don't get cold, right? So you start adding things in like root vegetables, you add in things like cayenne pepper and other things that will elevate or will bring up your body's own ability to regulate its temperature, And this, by the way, doesn't just work for people. This actually works for animals too. My grandmother told me that when they were on the farm when she was a kid, their hens always laid in the winter, even when it was snowing, and no one else's hens laid. And so I was like, well, what did you guys do? And she said, we added cayenne pepper to their feed. And then also they tied greens, like a bundle of greens on a rope, and they would tie it from the rafter in the barn. And so the chickens would have to jump to get, like, they would eat the bare edges of the greens, but then eventually it would eat it up the bundle, And so then they would have to jump to get the greens, right? And so they're getting exercise, and they're like exercising themselves, you know what I mean? It's like a little chicken gym. And it's funny to think about chicken gym, and then their temperature, their body temperature is elevated because of the cayenne peppers. They continue to function. They continue to lay eggs. So sorry.
It's okay. That's amazing. I did not know that.
Simple.
That's
simple.
Yeah. And I think that's great about.
I hope someone watches this that has chickens. They're like, dude, let's do that.
No way. We're going to give the chickens cayenne pepper. We're going to make them jump for their food. It's going to be great. We're going to get so many more eggs.
I know, right?
No, I think I really like that obviously our goal is to make it as simple for people. It's not like all this medical jargon, all this like crazy stuff. It's like, let's just honor the body. Let's honor the body's wisdom, honor the rhythms, honor like the fact that we need minerals that are supposed to be in our food to survive and thrive. Yes. And not like be, not prone to as many illnesses and to being decrepit and diseased and all of that.
Yes.
So I really like that. That's, I don't know, kind of where we've taken it. There's been a really good conversation about that.